Well, until we find our seats, I'll just present myself. First of all, I'm Mihaela, and I'm not a redhead, although it seems that the screen today is suggesting something, so maybe I'll consider it. But I am a team lead for Atera, and I also, beside the love that I have for technology and interest in everything that is happening in software development, I'm also happy to prepare content for presentations, for trainings in amazing events like the one that we have today. So yeah, let's thank to the organizers for taking all the trouble to do this amazing conference. Looks amazing until now. And when I'm not coding or speaking, I like to just go outside, do all sorts of things like cycling and hiking and traveling, especially for conferences if it's possible. But yes, I like also to travel. Right from the start, I have to say that the discussion that we are going to have today is more of a challenge, let's say, for you. Because when we discuss about architecture, we always think about the technical stuff. Okay, how to do this architecture to be more like that and more like this, and the patterns and everything. And although it's a good thing, like, yeah, think about the architecture that you're building, I also think that it's kind of a toxic trait that we have, thinking that it's always about the positioning levels and all sorts of technical matters and patterns and things like this. And we need for a second just to stop and think that, developers are people, even though sometimes it's hard to believe it. Developers are people, so we need team dynamics. When we are discussing architecture, yes, because we need to look at the team that we have and use our expertise in order to be sure that we are all aligned when we are discussing about architecture. Not only, okay, this is the architecture, take it, implement it, and just have fun. It's more than this. And this is exactly what I would like to challenge you today to think about your teams, the way that you're working. I would like to have, a two-way conversation, not just a presentation and that's it. I'm also interested on how you are doing things in your teams. Do we have architects in the room? We have also some architects, so you can give us from your perspective. So I'm guessing that most of the people in the room are developers, other things, I don't know, technical leads, other roles? No, developers. So we're good. We're just on the right track. I'm sure that we will have a lot to discuss because we are going to discuss about our architects without them knowing. So that's just great. But let's see a bit, what exactly is architecture? Because I don't know about you, I don't know how many times you've been searching for the definition, but I know for sure that in a moment when I just went on Google and search what is architecture in software, there are a lot of definitions, a lot of abstractions, and a lot of perspectives on how architecture is. And it seemed to me that because they are so abstract, sometimes they can be misleading and hard to understand for developers that maybe are just starting with this, trying to understand, okay, I want to get away from the task at hand. I want to learn a bit more about the product that I'm building. I want to make a change, maybe. I have an idea. I'm not sure if it's a good idea. So I'm trying to understand what is the deal with this architecture. So if it is to simplify it, we are just going to say that architecture is a start point. Until some years ago, we were like, it's the structure that we're building on. Not even a structure anymore. It's a start point. We are thinking about the details that we have, the requirements, the technologies, the business, and how the business is actually doing things. We are taking all this in consideration, and we are building a start. Building a start for how our high-level components are going to interact, how they are going to grow in relationship to one another, and then we are doing all this while thinking in the context of the project and the context of the market that we have and so on. But it's a start point, a structural start point, if you can put it like this. And when we talk about architecture, we can't ignore design. Because again, I hear in many occasions the fact that we are designing architecture, and what is architecture and what is design, so how exactly are we going to work with this and stuff like this. It's good to have it very clear. So when we discuss about architecture, as we were saying, it's about the high-level stuff. It's about the big components and how they are going to be built and how they are going to work in relationship to one another, what are their responsibilities and things like this. Choosing the right or the wrong architectural pattern will actually help us see exactly if our application will be performant, if it's going to scale, if our application is actually going to be secure. So yeah, it's about the important decisions, the ones that have an impact. On the other side, we have design. Design is more at component level, it's more about helping the developers in maybe following some best practices, understanding on each level what exactly is what is happening in the code base, how they can use some best practices in order to enhance the code that they are writing, so things like this. Extended a bit the discussion about architecture. We have Grady Bog that was saying that architecture, it's about the important decisions, and you can notice what are the important decisions in the moment that you actually see what is the cost of implementing that decision, So basically, it's about the cost of the change that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to change something in the architecture, or I'm just trying to change something in the design of the system, maybe some design patterns I have to use in there, what is happening. Going even a bit more forward, I really like this definition from Simon Brown. And he's saying like, okay, architecture is about the important decisions, the decisions that we can't change in an afternoon. So if it's going to take more than one afternoon to change that thing that you want to change in your code, probably it's about architecture and not only a coding change. And precisely because we can't change something in an afternoon, we have to think about, okay, how am I going to see, or how am I going to actually differentiate what is architecture, what is design, what are the most difficult things to change, and what are more, easier, approachable, and so on. And I really liked this picture because it's a very good, this picture, but the concept behind it, basically, the sharing layers, because we can actually visualize it, maybe in a more approachable domain. We can think about a building. So when we start working with a building, we have an idea about what we want, but we have to think about the important things. So we're thinking, I'm going to build a site. Well, if I'm building a house, right? Like that structure, it can be changed after that. We can do certain things, but it will be very hard, and it might have to do a lot with the balance that that building is going to have and so on. So that is very hard. That is important for us to actually think about and make a good decision, right? Then we are thinking about the structure. Okay, so I'm building the walls, and I'm building the roof. This is not completely very hard to change, but still it might have a lot of impact on how the house is going to be balanced and stuff like this. I can put at some point maybe a window somewhere, but it's going to be an effort in there. And then we go, okay, the skin. Yeah, that is easier to change. Not so much, but not as hard as is to change the site or to change the structure. Then we go step by step until we are discussing about furniture and stuff like this, which we can change, we can let go of, and things like this. The same thing is happening also when we are discussing about what can be changed in architecture and what it can be changed, or it's harder to change. So we can take both back-end situation and the front-end situation. So it's if we have a full stack front-end, back-end, it's okay because this applies to each situation. It's not only on one side of the development team. So basically, by switching to this mindset, we can see exactly, okay, these are the important decisions, or maybe I'm approaching something in my, I'm doing my task, and I'm trying to change something in there, and I'm going to see, okay, this seems very hard, it's going to take a while, it impacts these areas. So that's why it's important for developers to actually understand what's the deal with the architecture. You know, it's easy to think that if I'm a very good developer, you know, I'm a smart one, I know kind of some of the best practices and applying them, it's not going to be that important to actually work with architecture because, yeah, let the architect do the architecture. Well, actually, there are some benefits that we have from switching a bit the way we look at our work. We can understand how components are going to interact. If I'm doing a change in one place, how is going to be impacting another area of the application. I can see exactly how that component might evolve in the context of the product that we are building. And I'm going to give you my perspective. My interest at some point for architecture appeared because I was so desperate to have the same issues in the application, and I wasn't able to understand why was that happening. Why can't we just, I was working at the time on integrating, we are working with distributed teams, so I was more in the client part of the application and trying to understand why can't we just build something that gives us the data that we need as performant as possible and so on. And the architect was not really a present figure in the team. So I was trying to do my work, but at the same time, I was trying to understand what is happening in this system. So I just changed the perspective, started looking for answers, and understood, okay, I have to look a bit on the whole system, not only the client part, not only my task, and see exactly what is happening in there. And it was a game changer because, first of all, I wasn't frustrated anymore, and I didn't had so much complaints about the architect anymore. But more than this, I started being enjoying more the work that I was doing because I was researching and trying to find solutions besides just complaining and waiting for someone else to resolve my issue. So yeah, it's pretty important to actually, in order to not hate your job one day, to understand what is happening and having an overview in the application. Besides this story that I told you, and the benefits that I was mentioning that were in my case, there are a lot other perspectives that we can have in the moment that we are looking at the application as a whole. And, I understand that for the longest time we had this mindset that, okay, the development team just had to do the development and the architect is going to take care of the important things. We just have to code, no worries, this is the blueprint that we're going to use, just implement it and that's it. Well, it's not really like that. Because when you don't understand what you're building on, and specifically, let's take again the case of distributed team, there won't be consistency in there. There will be a lot of frustration when you don't know exactly why are you building the way that you're building, the layer that you're working on. So you become frustrated, and then you realize that you don't share the same vision as the other teams maybe, because you're working only on a specific part, you're not working on a product as a whole. And by doing this mindset switch that I was mentioning before, like getting the challenge of actually challenging my architect, which was very fun for a while, I also had the opportunity to invalidate some of the myths that I thought about architecture, like software architecture is inflexible and forever, or the architecture is an architect's business and I shouldn't care about that. It's not going to impact my work. Or architecture is not about coding. Really? Is implementing the architecture anymore? How are we actually making that architecture, that architectural plan real life? And in the next minutes, we will take, as you'll see, each of these myths, and we are going to invalidate them and actually learn a bit more about the central role that we are discussing, which is the architect. So what is an architect anyway? What's the deal with the architect? again, as in the case of the architecture, I have to say that it's very hard to define it. It's hard to give a very straight definition, but what we can say is that it's a role that needs us to grow into becoming if we want. It's a role that needs experience. It needs both failure and success in order to grow and have that experience that makes us better at taking decisions at this high level. Of course, along the way, I saw that there are many variations. So some teams don't have the role precisely, like you don't know the architect, but you have some tech lead, or you have, so it's a thing that also depends on the methodologies that are being used and the way the company that you are working with is organizing. But basically, it's about that person that is in charge of this whole context, which we are going to break and discuss further. So, since we can't really define what is an architect, who is this person, at least we can discuss about what is not an architect. You know, it's like, comes with ups and downs. It's a bit of dark, and then it's a bit of light. And then, just like we are doing in software development, right? Sometimes we can see very well how it's, what is the path on which we are going to go, and then darkness, and we don't understand what is happening in there. And that's why we have this presentation today, right? So, the architect. Is this an approachable role? It's like the architect is someone that we know that sits in its office and is just handing to the developers the blueprint, and now you are the chosen ones to implement that blueprint. And yeah, I'll see you at the end of the product, or maybe, you know, when we are discussing with customers and stuff like this. Well, excuse the irony, but I remember that in the first product that I ever worked with, I never had the opportunity to meet the architect. So I was working, I was actually doing my task, but not really understanding exactly what I'm doing. So when I switched to the next project, and the architect was having his desk like next to me, and he was so involved with the team and discussing and trying to understand what are the struggles and trying to help, I definitely understood that the architect is part of the team, like it or not, is part of the development process. Then the architect should be the god of the whole tech stack. Really? Like knowing it everything, like all the details? It's preposterous. How is anyone ever going to be good enough for the role? Who is going to want this kind of pressure, right? No. A better approach is to actually use the knowledge of the team while helping the team grow. So we are discussing, as I was saying, we are discussing about a role that is part of the team. So basically, we need to use the team, to use their knowledge in order to have the perspective and all the details that we need. Of course, the architect should be someone that has that overview and very strong technical knowledge, but not in all details. You know, the role of an architect can, even for one decision, for one discussion, can also be of another team member that it's maybe just a developer, let's say, maybe just a junior, maybe he has an idea. So look at the role a bit from another perspective. And then we have the architect that defines and guards architecture. So basically, the architecture is something so fixed and hard to change that no one should do this. And actually, we need someone to guard it, because the developers, we know developers that try to change the architecture, right? We have to guard it. No, it's not about that. And I think that we already discussed in the definition of architecture, the fact that it's a start, yeah? Something that we build step by step. We might have changes. We will definitely have some evolution in there. We might have some changes also, new requirements, but still it's something that we need to build step by step. It's not something that we have to, guard and be sure that no one ever does a step in another direction. So while staying in this context of the role, maybe if there are two things that you remember from this presentation about the architect, let these two be. One, the role is about leadership and not management. We'll discuss immediately why. And two, we need expertise, but not knowing it all. So let's take them step by step and prepare your eyes, because we have a light slide. So, leadership. What's the deal with leadership? Because we don't really talk about leadership when discussing about the architect, right? There's a difference between leadership and management. Management is more about specific tasks, measurable. We have this goal, we have to do it. What are the steps to go in there? Things like this. When we are discussing about leadership, we are discussing about being there for people, helping them grow, see exactly what they are struggling with, coaching a bit, trying to actually guide their way into building the product, but also becoming better professionals. So in the end, it's important for an architect to make sure that no matter of the level of experience that each developer has, there should be a common understanding of what we are building. And I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the architect should go to every developer and just help them do their code and stuff like this. It's about making sure that everyone is in the same page. Of course, senior developers can take care of juniors and things like this, so we can build in the team. But if you have an architect that is like, I'm not going to help anyone because I just gave you this and you have to build on this, then of course, the mindset in the team will not be collaboration and helping each other. It will be like, okay, each one has its own task, so see you in the demo, which is not a cool way to do it. So we don't usually discuss about the soft skills of the role, but they exist. We need to have very good communication as architects. We have to lean towards collaboration. And I'm not discussing only about, I'm not pointing fingers at architects. It's more about what are the things that we should, on one side, try to build for the ones that are in the role, and for the other part, for developers to know exactly how to approach. Maybe they have an architect that is not leaning towards collaboration and communication and helping. So it's important for us to know how to go and ask, and to know that it's okay to go and discuss with the architect and ask for some coaching. Then we have the other, the second thing that we were discussing about, the expertise. We already discussed the fact that the architect shouldn't be someone that knows everything. Actually, this is a very common, and I saw it not only with the architects, but also with the lead developers. If someone goes to a lead developer asking for a question, the expectation is for them to know. And if they don't know the answer, it's like, okay, why are you in this role if you can't answer my answer? That's not a magician. It's someone that has some experiences, knows how to approach some problems. So he is going to help you in finding the result, the solution that you're looking for. It's not someone that is going to just do a magic and resolve your problem and yeah, you've been chosen to go to the next level. That's not how it works. So we have to also, as developers, understand that the seniors, the tech leads, the architects and so on, so the people that have more experience in tech, don't know it all. They're human beings too. They have personal lives also. So I know it's hard to believe that developers have personal lives, and social life, but we all know it is like that. So instead of discussing about someone that knows everything, the real trick in the role, it's actually being able to switch from that high level that we are discussing to the specific situations in the application and see exactly how we can approach them, not knowing it all, but having the building with experience, the mindset of approaching the problems and coming with solutions quicker than when we are just new in the field and we don't know how to do it. So yeah, being an architect is challenging. Sometimes we can feel that we are misunderstood. Sometimes we can feel that we don't understand what the architect is trying to do. But it's important to have someone, at least from my experience. Maybe you had other experience, and I congratulate you, and I'm happy for you if it was like this. I really think that the architect should be someone with software development background, someone that understands what the team is building, someone that understands the impact of the decision that is making. So he knows what's the deal with, from switching, I don't know, from having a typo issue to actually changing something in the structure. We need someone that is able to understand the reality of the decisions, or how the decision that he is going to make are going to be grounded in reality. And the last thing that I would like to approach related to the role, it's related to this decision part. You know that we are discussing that architecture is about the important decisions, but at the same time we were discussing that architects are human beings, so we have to be patient with them, not making all the time all the right decisions. But a very good approach in software development, and it's not only in architecture, maybe also in your day-to-day task, is to actually wait until the very last moment for making a decision. So make sure that you have all the details. This is one approach, and to build upon this, you can also always think about, okay, I have all the requirements. I know what I have to do. And then there is this battle. Okay, I want to build in order for my system to be extendable, but I also don't want to make, over-engineering and implementing some scenarios that are not going to be happening in there. So always, when you have this kind of thought, ask for details from the people that can give you, as in the business, the product owner, the business analyst, the architect. Try to have as many information before making a decision as possible. Why it's important to keep this kind of approach? Because our system change. Market changes, requirements change. Our users see something in an application, maybe in a game. They're like, I want that in my application. You're like, but I can do that. I'm just working with Angular or with React, I can do that. So we actually have to be very careful about what are we saying yes to and what are we going to say no to, because it's going to impact the way we are going to work for that point on. And light again. So basically, this happens with the architect at the same time. As an architect, you need to see all the things that impact your decisions, like, as I was saying, the market, the technologies that change, the users' needs, the business needs maybe. I currently witnessed this thing that the management in the company was changing, so the direction of the product changed too, which is so cool for development, right? So yeah, we have to be prepared for all the scenarios. So definitely, it's not an easy job being an architect. It's not an easy job to work with architecture, but at the same time, we have to also see how we can help in building the architecture and building a very good product. So, the first question that I have for you is, okay, we said architecture is for developers, but is really every developer meant to be an architect, so you can become an architect at any point? Well, in here there are two things that I want us to be very careful and not ignore when discussing about the role. Having an overview and some occasional, ideas about the architecture does not make you an architect. So I know that in software development we have big egos, but slow that down, because there is a long way to go, as we discussed, to becoming an architect. And having an architect does not make you responsibility-free of the moment where something fails or one decision is not okay. Because, as we were discussing, we are working as a team, so we should see exactly how we can approach certain situations. And the architecture is not only built by one person. As we were saying, yes, an architect has more experience and is able to make decisions at that high level. But then it's our responsibility to actually see exactly if we see something that might not work in reality. Maybe they missed something. So it's about collaboration. And you're going to think, okay, so basically if I'm contributing to the architecture and my colleague is contributing to the architecture and it's a team of seniors, so it's pretty stable, why do I need an architect? Can't we just have some self-organizing team working on it and not having to actually bother with having a role to take care of it, stuff like this? Well, it depends. This is the consultant answer, the generic consultant answer, but it depends. And why is that? Because, if it's a very smooth product, very straightforward, not a lot of decisions to make, not a lot of evolution, well, you can say, okay, we have a team of seniors, maybe someone from there can be like a team, like a lead developer, someone with experience, so we can work it. But when we are discussing about more complex scenarios, products that evolve in time, that we have a long period of development, maybe a bigger team, a lot of business scenarios, well, in there, even though all developers are very experienced and are very good, we need someone that keeps things together. Because let's be honest, the levels of engagement in a team are changing. Maybe because of personal things, maybe because we are more interested in another technology, so we are not that interested in what is happening in the product anymore. So we need someone that holds things together. So my answer will be that we need an architect when we are discussing about products that evolve and that have a lot of complexity. But then again, it depends also in the methodologies, the company that you're part of, and all sorts of details of this kind. So if it would be for developers to just conclude something or take some ideas, it would be that architecture definitely is not something that we can't understand, we can't work with, we shouldn't work with, and that is going to overcomplicate our lives. No. It's something that we can contribute, and that if you are thinking about growing in the role, you can definitely do it with the people that you have in the team. And especially with seniors and the architect and everyone. So don't be afraid of architecture, approach it, see exactly how things are working, try to understand why some technologies were chosen for your product and why not others. So what are the advantages, what are the downsides? Then if you see something that is not okay, maybe you saw some technology that would work better in a certain context, challenge the decisions and don't think, okay, but I read about this, but I'm sure that my architect already thought about it, so it's not a good thing to propose. No. Be confident and go and discuss. And if it's not a good approach, at least you will know why it's not a good approach. So you've added a brick to your learning, building your learning, so to say. Then try to understand the big picture of the product and why certain things are being made in a certain way. And ask to be involved. Like, go to people that you think that are very good and have the knowledge that you need. And try to, at the same time, mentor maybe younger developers that are trying to understand what is happening in the development arena. And then, after all we've discussed, what do you think? Should architects code, or they should just architect because they are architects and should take care of architecture? So they should. It depends. Are you a consultant? Okay. Well, I strongly believe that we need an architect that knows what is happening in the application. But we have to keep it real. Sometimes it's hard to do And again, it depends on the context of the business and everything, but sometimes you don't have the time as an architect to just go and open the IDE. As I was mentioning before, I had someone at some point, an architect in the team, that was opening the IDE and adding some structure in there and doing some coding. So he was into doing this. But sometimes between the meetings and the other decisions and research for new solutions and things like this, maybe it's hard to actually go and code. So the first option, it's not really an option sometimes. But then you have other ways that you can actually be engaged with the coding part. And that is, okay, at some point you need to create a new feature. And you know that you have some very talented developers in the team. How about you give them some ownership on these features? How about you let them see exactly what is happening in there, how that should be built, And in this way, you actually delegate, you actually help others grow too. Or doing some pair programming or some pair architecting. When you are making some decision about the architecture, maybe just gather if it's a big team, that would be very hard. But if you have some lead developers, gather them and they can gather the team around them afterwards and explain the decision. But you can do this kind of knowledge sharing. You can keep engaged with what is happening in the IDE in the end. Then you can do some code reviews. This is very straightforward, right? At least you don't have to leave comments. You just have to look a bit to see exactly what is happening. Add some architecture, unit tests. There are all sorts of tools to control exactly how some rules about the architecture that you're using are being implemented. So definitely a good scenario. Add some steps in some quality gates in your pipelines, or doing some architectural katas. Have you done architectural katas? That's a very nice exercise. I really recommend you to do this. Basically, you take a scenario. You can search for architectural katas on Google, and you will find the site there. You have a lot of scenarios. You choose a scenario from there, and then you try to work as an architect would do it, as in seeing exactly, okay, these are the requirements, these are the most important things, these are the less important things. Some things are not very, very clear, just as they are not in the real case, when trying to build an architecture. So basically, you can actually do this exercise with your team and build some knowledge in this part, and then do it with your architect or ask for feedback afterwards. It's a very nice exercise. And actually let's say, you can do some sort of team building with this, right? To see exactly how everyone is aligned. Or maybe doing it for your architecture, the product that you have, to challenge the architecture that you already have in the product. So it can be interesting, and it can be a very nice way to grow. So for the architect, I think the idea is very clear. Be open to the team, collaborate with the team. Try to listen and use the knowledge of the ones that you have around. Try to build not only a strong product, but also a strong team, because a strong team will build a strong product, so they include one another. And from time to time, just get your hands dirty and do some of the approaches that we already discussed. All in all, it's about leaving behind, those myths that we were mentioning in the beginning. It's about thinking that we are colleagues and that we need to work together. And I really think in this, I really believe in something. It's this saying that how you do anything, you do everything. So I really think that if you at some point are in the mood of, I don't like my job anymore, or I'm just doing it, it's just a period. It's not just a period. Usually, how you approach a certain area of your life, you're approaching all the other areas. But try to find fun and the interesting part in your job, and try to step up your game and see how you can become better. If at some point you just notice that, you got a bit bored, you don't understand some stuff, or you're just lost. And the reality is that we have to live with the decisions that our architects are doing, or our technical leads or the business is doing for us. So from time to time, go challenge the decisions that they have, and you'll see that your learning curve will definitely change, and everything will be more clear, and you will enjoy your work more. Thank you, and let's talk right now. So, do we love our architects or hate them? I'm kidding, no. Yeah. Seems like we have a microphone. If the microphone is in the room, please make some noise.
Okay. Hi. Thank you very much for your presentation. In fact, some of the topics that you mentioned today, I have been thinking about them for some time as well. So I would just, maybe it's more like of a comment instead of a question, but maybe you can comment as well if you think it's relevant. I think I would just go a bit further and say that sometimes it's not just architects and developers, but also the support teams. So I see sometimes a big distance between the architect team and then the support team. And oftentimes I see, or I participate in discussions where the architect says, oh, but I thought that was what was implemented because that's what I designed. And in fact, it's a big difference, a big distance between what the architect designs and then what it's actually implemented, right? So yeah, sometimes I see this kind of, you mentioned one word, which was responsibility, and I think it's responsibility, but also accountability. Sometimes, you know, what you implement is the developer teams and the support teams that then have the accountability and responsibility for solving problems, and sometimes it starts in the architect team. And I see that sometimes they don't have a lot of accountability on what, you know, is proposed and what is implemented. So just actually more of a comment, but if you would like to say some words.
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with you, because this goes exactly in that part that we were mentioning, that not everyone is understanding. You know, the architect just says something, no one is challenging the thing that he's saying, and then we realize that we don't understand exactly what was the vision. So we have to make sure that developers understand, support teams understand. Let there be light. So let there be light in the teams trying to implement, because, yeah, definitely, we mentioned more the developer-architect relationship, but it's about all the areas that the architect is going to influence, all the areas that are actually implementing the architecture in the end, and we are making sure that the product goes to the end users. So thank you. Other questions? Comments? Yeah, please.
Hello. My question is more related to the, I mean, in your presentation, I realized that you think the architecture more like is a natural progression of the a team or a team member from actually the team. But what happens when you have a strike position that you have to have rules? And for me, it's like, how can you manage an environment where you have strict rules that you have to follow, but no one is in the same page, for example? This is, for me, how can I explain?
So basically, it's something fixed. You have the architecture. There are some rules.
That is like because the company imposed the title. It's not because you are saying that it's more like natural progression of the developers. But how can you manage this change of mind if you have strict rules and you have to manage the team?
Yeah. So basically, I've been in a situation like this, how I was mentioning before.
Yeah.
There was a moment when I joined the team. I was a technical lead, so I just got in touch with the architect, but not so much because he was in another country. And we were having that scenario, that specific scenario that I told you, distributed teams, one front-end team trying to make some, trying to consume a lot of services. Yeah, it was crazy. And in the beginning, it was very frustrating because the team on one side did not have the courage to go and challenge the decision. They were like so frustrated and not liking what is happening. And on the other side, for me, I was a newcomer, so no one knew me really. I had to gain the trust of the team and the management and so on. So it's not something that is going to happen overnight, but you can do some small steps. And you can show that your arguments are going to... I've noticed that usually businesses are more responsive to the moments where you are talking about costs. So you have to think, okay, how is that going to be an advantage for us? How we are going to save some money? How we are going to save some resources? You know, you can start from this, but come with arguments that are very, very well backed up by examples, proof of concepts, things like this. And you have to build. Like, you have to build step by step, and sometimes, you know, be a bit assertive. Try to discuss with people, being as natural as possible and telling them in their face if you are perfectly sure that something is not okay and should be changed. So yeah, I understand that sometimes you have to fight with the business, and sometimes you have to fight with the fear of trying something new. In the big companies, I saw this, that we are just going to use these two technologies because we are using them from forever and they worked very good. But their users, their clients, are asking some things that you can do with those technologies. So yeah, you need to challenge exactly how is that going to make their lives easier, how it's going to cut some costs, and all the advantages that it's going to bring.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? If not, as we can see, we are going to close the session. Thank you very much for joining me, and see you around.